Delighted that you're considering taking GCSE Latin or Gratin with us next year. Let's find out more about the courses then. If you were to take Latin, you'd be working towards 3 exam papers. You'd have 2 literature papers, that's the verse and prose papers, and then a language paper that would be looking at unseen, translation and answering of comprehension questions. If you were to take Gratin, that's actually 2 GCSEs in one option slot. There isn't a GCSE called Gratin. So you'd still have the 3 Latin papers, but you would also have 3 Greek papers you'd be working towards as well. Again, you'd have the literature and the language papers. It's the same level for both Latin and classical Greek. Everything in normal times would be exam based. There is no coursework. And you can take both Latin or Gratin alongside classics, and we do have students that do both of our GCSEs. You can take classics without having ever studied it before, so even though you're doing Latin at the moment, you could go on and do classics as well as Latin. But you do need to have studied Latin for either the Latin or the Gratin courses. So what does Latin or Gratin really involve? Well, you'd be continuing to study the grammar and syntax of Latin, and then if you're taking up the Greek, then you'd have to learn about that as well. You'd be able to translate stories of unseen Latin or Greek into English, and then you'd also be studying literature in the original language. This allows you to think about the background and the context of the stories, as well as their style and the way that they've been written. So let's have a look at the literature that you would be reading. For the Latin, it's the story of the Thessalian witches. Now, supposedly there was a town in the ancient world that struggled with the witches going round the dead bodies, so they used to hire young men to guard against them. This is the story supposedly from the eyes of one young man. It's a fictional tale, but is lots of fun. And then you'd also be looking at some Latin love poetry. I always think it's interesting to see what the ancient Romans thought about their love lives and how similar some of the lyrics might be to pop songs that you listen to today. And then if you were studying Greek as well, you'd have stories like that of the way that crocodiles, that they knew about them for the ancient Greeks that lived in the Nile. And then also the story of the women that used to worship the god Dionysius. So this is the tragic story of one worship of Dionysus that goes wrong when the women go into the hills and drink lots of alcohol and then come back down to the town and realise what they've done. I hope you will agree that all of these different pieces of literature are fascinating and interesting for their stories alone, but also then to be reading them in the original is a real privilege and an enjoyable opportunity. So, I couldn't talk to you today without mentioning our trip. This isn't a compulsory one, but offers the perfect opportunity for you to see the places that you've been reading about in the literature. It's offered on alternate years in the October half term, in normal times, so we would hope that we could be able to offer it to you in your 5th form. We visit Rome, Pompeii and around the Bay of Naples, so you get to see a whistle-stop tour of the various different places that you've read about and looked at sources of during your studies. You might still have other questions. You are welcome to contact me, I'm the head of classics, so you could do that either on Teams or via my email, which is listed there. Or of course you could speak to your class teacher about how they feel you're getting on at the moment if you're considering taking on Latin or Greek next year. As I'm sure that you're aware, the classical subjects are pretty popular at our school. We always have 3 classes of the classics, and then we tend to have a small but happy group of those taking Gratin, so usually around 6 to 10 pupils, and you can imagine there's a good sense of camaraderie amongst them. Those that take Latin, well, at the moment in 5th form, we have 2 sets of around 10 to 15 pupils. So again, small but jolly classes that enjoy the study of the classical languages. Those that take Gratin, you would have to do 1 extra lesson a week. That usually takes place during one of the chapel sessions, so you wouldn't go to chapel, you could instead go to an extra Greek lesson in that time. But apart from that, then the Gratin course fits 2 GCSEs into 1 option block. Okay, I hope that you'll be interested enough to take one of the classical languages with us next year, and look forward to seeing you in a classroom with us next year. Thank you.